What's going on, guys? This is Foresight Capital, and today I wanted to give a quick update on Palantir, why we closed up 10% on the day, and what that means for this trade moving forward. All that I ask is that if this video brings you value, consider subscribing and give this video a thumbs up because it really helps me know to make more content like this in the future. So again, today Palantir closed at about $28.51 per share, which was up about 9.8% on the day, and is trading relatively flat in after hours. However, we did see a bit of a continuation of this uptrend all the way to a high today of about $28.94 before having this bit of a pullback. We're going to talk about why here in just a moment, but yesterday I made a video highlighting that we probably needed to see a pullback to the $24.60 per share support level, which is notated by this yellow support line, before we saw a continuation of the uptrend. Now this morning in pre-market hours, admittedly before I was even up, at about 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we saw a big sell-off in Palantir, where Palantir actually fell back to a low of $24.61 per share. We hung around there for about an hour pre-market, and then buyers started coming back in and pushing the price up, reaffirming that $24.60 is a very strong support line for this stock. We then saw a continuation of this uptrend throughout the day, and if we zoom in here, we can see that we had a bit of trouble around 2770, which has been a very long-term resistance line that we can see has been resistance multiple times over the past couple of weeks, including about last Wednesday where we didn't quite test it, but we're running back up in that area before seeing a sell-off. We then broke above 2770 and used this level of support, or used this level of previous resistance as support for multiple trading hours, and have continued that uptrend, which might indicate that this could be a new level of support, which was previous resistance for Palantir. Now this is all to say that a couple of weeks ago we saw a pretty big breakout above 2770, all the way up to about $31 per share before having the pullback that forced us back down into the downtrend that we've been trading in over the past couple of weeks. So this isn't a confirmed breakout, but it is very bullish that we had a couple of candles close and trade the entire candle above the 2770 level that's been such a bear for the past couple of weeks. So the reason for the big run up in price today was that the U.S. Army announced that they're going to re-up their contract with Palantir that they signed last December in 2019, which was a one-year contract worth $110 million, but a total contract of $458 million. The last three of those being optional years, meaning that the Army had to love the product, continue to re-up it year after year, and if they didn't love the product, they had the ability to cancel it. So we can see here that the U.S. Army's Program Executive Office for Enterprise Information Systems opted to execute the second year of its partnership with Palantir for a total price of $114 million. Now that's a very substantial part of next year's revenue, which we'll also talk about in just a moment. But that has really two levels of catalyst for Palantir. First and most importantly is revenue for next year. So it's a very substantial part of their revenue, as I mentioned, but also the second level of catalyst is that it shows that the U.S. Army, which is one of Palantir's biggest clients, about 60% of their overall revenue is government contracts, is actually willing to re-up their contracts and continue working with Palantir's products moving forward. We also heard recently, a couple of weeks ago, that the Greek government reaffirmed that they're also going to continue to use Palantir products moving forward. So while we want to see Palantir diversify their revenue streams and not have all of their revenue tied into governments, it's at least a catalyst, a positive catalyst, that we're seeing the governments willing to continue to re-up their contracts, even at a slightly higher valuation. So we can see that they had to pay $110 million for the services last year, $114 million this year, and that leaves a couple $100 million left to receive over the next 2 years. So Palantir actually has upped their guidance for this year to about $1.07 billion after Q3 earnings, which was a 44% increase in revenue from 2019 to 2020. And they haven't quite given as much guidance on 2021, but analysts are expecting a 32% increase for 2021 to an estimated revenue of $1.4 billion. So this $114 million contract represents somewhere between 8 and 9% or so of next year's expected revenue, which is actually very important for Palantir. Now, the article goes on to mention the U.S. Army, and this was an entirely separate contract, so we don't want to get those confused. This is in addition to the $91 million U.S. Army contract that they already had and a $300 million renewal with their quote-unquote aerospace customer. So the run-up that we saw today is a bit warranted because, as I mentioned, it's two levels of catalyst. One is that we've got a roughly 8 to 9% increase in their expected revenue for next year, which is basically what we ran up today. And the other is the fact that they're continuing to gain support from the U.S. government, who, as we know, really has virtually unlimited pockets when it comes to their spending abilities. So it's very it's enticing to see that for buyers, and that's what ultimately caused us to have this bit of a run-up. So how does it change the trade moving forward? Well, what we really want to see for this stock is for it to come back down and use 2770 as support. I think we're going to see a bit of a pullback as buyers sort of digest this news, stop coming in, because as I mentioned, we saw a pretty big run-up even in aftermarket hours, though we've seen that kind of fade away and we're actually trading relatively flat. So we'd ideally want to see a pullback to the 2770 level and use it as support. If we break through it, we have to look back at this roughly $26 level that is actually the 38.2% retracement on the Fibonacci retracement level as a potential support, but we don't want to see a pullback all the way to 2460, although admittedly I personally would, because I missed the buying opportunity, at which point I said I would be buying if we saw that dip, and we saw it a little bit sooner than I thought. So if we use this 2770 level as support, we can then have the momentum to run up, and the next levels of resistance that we need to look out for are the bottom side of this long-term trend that we just broke through on Tuesday of last week, which can now be used as resistance, as well as this 78.6% retracement level on the Fibonacci. Again, the Fibonacci is drawn from all-time highs of 3350 down to the bottom of this overall trend of about 2115. So this would be a 78.6% retracement of that downtrend back to the upside, and we saw the price rejected of Palantir right around that level back towards the beginning of December. So again, bottom side of this longer term support line and this $31 per share range are really kind of the next price points if we see Palantir continue to trade above 2770 and use it as support. So I won't actually be buying at this point. I potentially will scale out and take some profits on the number of shares that I'm trading if we see a continuation towards these levels, but I won't actually be buying more until we see a pullback to 2587. That's personally how I'm trading it, again using these two levels which are very close to each other as resistance, but I want to see us hold 2770. If we get a fake out just like we did here and a continuation of the downfall, that's when I start looking to add, but not until we're all the way down to 2587. So a bit of a holding pattern for me. Just kind of wanted to give that update on why we saw the big increase. The fact that we did actually see us touch that exact 2460 level that we've been talking about as support for this stock, just to further prove that the technical analysis is working for this stock, because I receive a lot of comments saying that it all doesn't make sense and that it's all made up. This is a pretty good indicator here that it's working. But let me know in the comments what you think about that. Thanks for watching until the end. And again, don't forget to subscribe and like this video to help us reach more people. And I'll catch you in the next one.